Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Terrible Stories. I ruined Christmas by telling my nephew Santa isn't real. I never meant to ruin Christmas. It started like every other family gathering, with too many coats on one bed, kids hyped up on sugar cookies, and adults pretending not to hate small talk. My sister Olivia was hosting this year, meaning everything had to be perfect, her word, not mine. She had the whole house decked out in white and gold garlands, flickering candles on every surface, and a towering Christmas tree that looked like it belonged in a department store window. I arrived late, of course, as I always do, not out of spite, just habit. I'm not really the holiday spirit type. My idea of Christmas is watching Die Hard with a bottle of wine and avoiding relatives. But this year, my sister begged me to come, saying my presence would mean a lot to her 6-year-old son, Max. Max loves me, he thinks I'm cool, because I once fixed a broken toy using duct tape and told him the truth about how chocolate milk isn't actually made by brown cows. So when I walked in and saw Max's little face light up, I smiled despite myself. He rushed over, hugged my legs, and dragged me toward the living room to show me the cookies he decorated. Sugar, rainbow sprinkles, way too much red icing classic 6-year-old art. I sat on the floor with him for a while, listening to his excited rambling about reindeer and the elves, and how Santa was going to come down the chimney tonight. He's bringing me the blue race car with the fire stripes, Max whispered like it was a state secret. I asked him in my letter, and Mommy said if I'm good, he'll bring it for sure. I nodded, half listening, half watching my brother-in-law try to carve a dry turkey in the kitchen behind us. But what if he forgets? Max asked suddenly. I turned my head back to him. Santa won't forget, I said without thinking, unless your mom forgot to buy it. He blinked at me. But Santa makes the toys in his workshop. I froze, realizing too late what I'd just implied. I could have corrected myself. I could have lied. But for some reason, I don't know why. Maybe the wine I'd already started sipping. I leaned back and said, Max, you know Santa's not real, right? There was a moment of silence so sharp, it felt like the world paused. Max's mouth fell open, his eyes wide with confusion and disbelief. He's not, he whispered, and then his little face crumpled like tissue paper. I panicked. Not because I thought I'd done something wrong at first, but because Max looked like I had just kicked his puppy. He didn't cry, not right away. Instead, he stood up, walked slowly toward the Christmas tree, like he needed to double-check that it was still there, and then turned around with the most heartbroken expression I've ever seen on a child. You're joking, he said, hopeful, pleading. I looked around, hoping maybe someone else would swoop in and fix it, some magical adult intervention. But there was no one. My sister was still busy showing off her ugly yet trendy gingerbread centerpiece to our cousin Kelly. No, I said, trying to soften it now. I mean, he's not real in the way you think. Like, he's more of a story people tell, kind of like a tradition. It's not a bad thing, just, it's complicated. But the damage was done. Max's lower lip quivered and the tears finally came. Slow and silent at first, and then the full-on sobbing. I reached out, trying to calm him, but he backed away and ran down the hall toward the bedrooms. I stood there, stupidly, still holding a half-eaten sugar cookie. And that's when Olivia noticed something was wrong. She walked over, towel still in her hands, and concern on her face. "Where's Max?" she asked. I pointed toward the hallway, still processing everything. "He ran off," I said. He found out about Santa." Olivia blinked, as if I'd just told her someone died. "What do you mean he found out?" she asked slowly. I looked at her and immediately regretted every life decision that brought me to this moment. I might have, accidentally, told him Santa isn't real. The silence was instant and brutal. "You what?" she hissed, lowering her voice but somehow making it feel louder. I tried to backpedal, tried to explain that it wasn't intentional, that Max was asking questions, and I just answered honestly, but Olivia wasn't having it. She put the towel down, face turning red like the tip of Rudolph's nose, and stormed off toward the bedrooms, leaving me there alone under twinkling fairy lights, realizing I'd officially become the villain of Christmas. The thing about ruining Christmas is that you don't just wreck a day. You fracture an entire memory bank for years to come. Olivia was gone for a long time, and during that silence, The rest of the family began to realize something was off. Kelly asked if Max was okay. My mom kept glancing from me to the hallway, putting two and two together with each passing second. Finally, Olivia emerged from the back, holding Max's hand. His face was blotchy, his cheeks flushed from crying, and he wouldn't look at me. She knelt beside him in front of the Christmas tree and whispered something into his ear. He gave her a weak nod, sniffling like someone who had just aged 10 years in a single hour. She stood up and turned toward me. "We need to talk," she said. It wasn't a suggestion. She led me into the kitchen, away from the others, while Max curled up on the couch, staring blankly at one of the ornaments, like it held the answers to the universe. "Do you understand what you did?" she asked, not angry now, but something worse. Disappointed. I nodded like a kid in trouble at school. "I didn't mean to hurt him," I said. "He just asked me directly. I didn't want to lie." She sighed, pressing her hands against the counter. "He's 6. Logan, he doesn't need to know the truth yet. He's got so few years of magic left before life gets hard and boring and cynical. You took that from him." That line hit me harder than I expected. I suddenly remembered my own childhood. The way I'd stare out the window on Christmas Eve, listening for sleigh bells that never came. The thrill of maybe seeing Santa, the cookies left out on the mantel, half eaten by morning, convincing me he'd been there. "I really messed up," I said quietly. Olivia didn't disagree. "You're going to have to apologize to him," she said. Like, really apologize. Not just say sorry, but explain that you made a mistake and that it's okay for him to still believe in Santa if he wants to. I nodded, even though I had no idea how to do that. Was there a guidebook for undoing soul-level disappointment in a child? If there was, I'd have bought it twice by now. I spent the next 10 minutes pacing the hallway like I was about to walk into a courtroom trial. Max was still curled up on the couch, a soft blanket pulled halfway over his face, eyes red but no longer streaming. Olivia gave me a look that said now or never, so I approached slowly and sat down on the edge of the couch near his feet. "Hey, buddy," I started, my voice unsure. He didn't respond. I tried again. "Max, I want to say I'm really sorry." He shifted slightly, but still wouldn't look at me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pressed forward. "What I said earlier, that Santa isn't real, it wasn't fair. I was wrong to take that away from you. Your mom's right. You get to believe in the magic of Christmas for as long as you want. And honestly, I think I forgot how special that magic is." Max peeked out from the blanket just a little, his small eyes searching mine. "But you said he's not real." I nodded. Sometimes grown-ups say things they shouldn't, especially when they forget what it felt like to be a kid. I used to believe in Santa too, and I still think about those Christmas mornings as some of the best days of my life. It's okay to believe Max. It really is. There was a long silence. Then Max sat up a little, his blanket falling into his lap. "Do you think Santa forgives people?" I blinked back sudden tears. I think Santa's whole job is forgiving people and making them feel special again. He nodded slowly, then, after a pause, whispered, "Okay." I looked up to see Olivia in the doorway, watching us with arms folded, her expression softening. I didn't get a full smile, but I got something, a slight tilt of the head that said, "I see you trying." And maybe that was enough for now. The rest of Christmas Eve passed in cautious calm. The tension lingered in the corners of the room like the faint smell of burnt cookies, unmistakable but tolerable. Max eventually joined the family again, sitting close to his mom, quiet but no longer shut off. My brother didn't say much to me, but I noticed that he didn't avoid me either, which felt like a small win. Dinner was served roast beef, yams, stuffing, and Olivia's famous cranberry sauce. Everyone made a show of being cheerful, but the earlier scene still hung in the air like invisible mistletoe, daring someone to bump into it. I kept my head down, helped clear the dishes, and stayed mostly silent. It wasn't until later, when most of the adults had drifted to the living room with drinks in hand, that I saw Max standing alone by the fireplace, staring at the empty plate left out for Santa. I walked over and crouched beside him. "Cookies look good this year," I said gently. He nodded but didn't smile. Then, after a long pause, he asked, "Do you think Santa will still come, even if someone said he's not real?" I took a breath. I think Santa doesn't care what anyone says. He only cares about the kids who believe in him. And if you still do, then nothing's changed. Max looked down at the plate, then back at me. I believe, he said, more to himself than to me. I smiled. Then I think you're in for a good Christmas morning. He finally gave me a small grin, and that single moment was worth all the awkward silences and passive-aggressive glares that had come before. Christmas morning arrived with the sound of paper tearing and excited squeals echoing through the house. I had crashed on the pull-out couch in the basement and woke to the scent of cinnamon rolls baking upstairs. I hesitated before going up, unsure if my presence would be welcomed, but the sound of Max shouting, "He came! He really came!" pulled me up the stairs like a rope. I stepped into the living room to see the aftermath of holiday magic wrapping paper scattered like confetti, presents stacked in uneven piles, and Max sitting cross-legged in front of a half-assembled Lego spaceship. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Uncle James, look what Santa brought." I knelt beside him, pretending to be amazed at the box's 1/200-piece count. He started explaining how he was going to build it step by step, showing me the instruction booklet like it was sacred scripture. My brother and Olivia stood by the kitchen doorway watching. I caught their eyes cautiously. Jason gave a short nod, not warm, not cold neutral, but not hostile. It was something. Olivia walked over and crouched beside us. "You building that all by yourself?" she asked Max. He nodded proudly. She looked at me, her face unreadable for a moment. "Thanks for sitting with him last night," she said quietly. I nodded. "I'm sorry," I whispered back. She nodded once, stood up, and walked away. Not unfriendly, but not exactly inviting either. Later, as the excitement began to fade and relatives started packing their cars, I helped load leftovers into containers and took out the trash. Jason followed me to the driveway, hands in his coat pockets. "Max is good now," he said, looking at the overcast sky. I nodded. "He's a tough kid." "Still, you shouldn't have said what you said," he added, his voice firm. I didn't argue. "I know." He looked at me for a second, then sighed. "But you didn't mean harm. I get that." We stood there in silence until he finally said just, "Next time, let the parents do the parenting, yeah?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Next time." And with that, he turned and walked back inside. I stood alone in the driveway watching the breath rise from my mouth and disappear into the cold air. January arrived cloaked in cold gray mornings and post-holiday quiet. The decorations came down slowly, first the outside lights, then the tree, then the stockings that had hung on the mantel, like smiling ghosts from a sweeter time. Back in my apartment, I found myself replaying Christmas over and over, like a bad scene in a film I couldn't stop watching. I kept wondering if I had crossed a line so permanent that no amount of apology could erase it. My sister Sarah called to check in a week later. She had heard about the Santa incident from Jason and offered her brutally honest commentary. "You're such an idiot," she said. First thing, I didn't deny it. I didn't plan it, I told her. It just slipped out. "That doesn't make it better," she said bluntly. "But you're not evil, just socially clumsy and tragically tone-deaf." "Thanks," I replied. She sighed. "Did you ever think that maybe Max needed the magic more than the truth?" I had thought about that nearly every day since. I just hadn't admitted it aloud. "I thought I was helping him," I said quietly. He asked a question. Nobody else would answer it. Sarah was quiet on the other end for a moment. Then, more softly, she added, "He's a kid. He doesn't want answers. He wants wonder." That stuck with me all day. I began to write a letter to Max, not an email, a real letter. Longhand. I didn't know if it would ever reach him or if Jason would even let him read it. But I wrote anyway. I told him I was sorry. I told him that grown-ups sometimes get so caught up in facts that we forget the beauty of imagination. I said I hoped he would always believe in good things, even if they couldn't be seen. I slipped it into an envelope, put a stamp on it, and dropped it in the mail the next morning. No reply came for weeks. I didn't expect one. Not really. But then in late February, a padded envelope showed up at my door. Return address, Jason and Olivia. Inside was a drawing Max's shaky handwriting spelling Uncle James At the top and underneath, a crayon drawing of me holding a giant candy cane next to what was obviously Santa Claus riding a dragon. My eyes burned a little as I laughed aloud. The drawing stayed on my fridge like a badge of hope. I stared at it every morning while drinking coffee, a reminder that maybe not everything was ruined. That one silly moment hadn't completely erased the relationship I had with Max or the love between us. It didn't mean everything was fixed. Jason still hadn't called. We hadn't spoken since Christmas Eve. But Olivia sent a short text after the letter arrived. Max got your note. He liked it. He wanted to draw something back. I texted back a simple thank you. No response, but I took what I could get. Time passed. March rolled into April, and work picked up. I buried myself in deadlines, kept my head down. But I thought about my family a lot. I missed them more than I wanted to admit. Then, near the end of April, Olivia called out of the blue. I stared at the screen when her name popped up, hesitating before I answered. Hey, I said, trying not to sound nervous. Hi, James, she said. Her voice was neutral, but not cold. Jason's birthday's next weekend. I thought you might want to come over. I blinked. Seriously? It's not a trap, she said, almost laughing. He doesn't know I'm calling you. He's still mad, but I think he misses you, even if he won't say it. I hesitated, then nodded even though she couldn't see me. I'll come, I said. I spent the week fretting over what to bring, whether to say sorry again, whether Jason would yell or ignore me or both. But when I showed up on his doorstep with a bottle of whiskey and a half-apologetic smile, he opened the door, looked at me for a long second, then stepped aside without a word. We sat on the porch later, just the two of us, while the kids played in the yard. He cracked open the bottle I brought and poured 2 glasses. You really blew it, he said finally. I know. Max cried for 2 nights, he said flatly. Olivia almost banned you for life. I deserve that, I admitted. He looked at me sideways. But then you wrote that letter, and you didn't defend yourself. Not once. Not in the letter. Not to Olivia. Not even now. There's nothing to defend, I said. I messed up. He nodded, took a sip. Max still believes in Santa, you know. He said Santa told you to test him to see if he still believed. Now, he thinks it was a test. I smiled despite myself. That kid's a genius. Or desperate to believe, Jason said, and either way, he's okay now. Then, finally, he sighed and muttered, You're still an idiot, but I missed you. It wasn't a hug or a grand reconciliation. But it was enough. Jason and I weren't suddenly best friends again, not overnight at least. But the ice had melted just enough to let warmth in again. In the weeks after his birthday, I found myself being invited to more family dinners, more casual get-togethers. Max started calling me Uncle James again, with that same excited bounce in his voice, like nothing had changed. We never directly addressed the incident in front of him. It became one of those unspoken chapters in family history that everyone knew about, but no one ever talked about outright. I didn't mind. My redemption wasn't in having everyone admit I was right or forgive me with a big speech. It was in the little things. Max grabbing my hand when we crossed the street, Jason pouring me a drink without hesitation, Olivia letting me help decorate for Father's Day in their living room. Even my mom eventually stopped giving me side-eye during Sunday brunch. One day in July, Max tugged my sleeve while we were watching a movie and whispered, I know Santa's not real. I froze for a second, then slowly looked at him. He was 7 now, getting sharper, eyes full of that mischievous gleam. You do? I asked carefully. He nodded. Yeah, I figured it out. But I still like pretending. I think it's fun. So you're not mad? He shook his head. Nah, it was kind of weird when you said it that night, but I get it now. Then he leaned close and whispered, I think Daddy still believes a little, though, so don't tell him. I laughed loud and hard for the first time in months. That one comment felt like healing, like closure wrapped in childish mischief. I high-fived him and swore to keep a secret. We made cookies that afternoon Christmas style in the middle of July just because we could. I told him Santa loved chocolate chip the most, and he grinned like I just handed him the keys to magic itself. Later, as I watched him sprinkle powdered sugar over snowflake-shaped cookies, I thought back to that night on Christmas Eve. The awkward silence, the look of hurt, the sound of Jason slamming the door. I remembered thinking I'd destroyed something sacred. But here we were, laughing, flour in our hair, sprinkles on the floor. The thing about magic is, it doesn't live in beards or sleigh bells or North Poles. It lives in forgiveness, in growth, in the way families bend without breaking. It lives in second chances and silly cookies and a nephew who still believes in Santa, in joy, and maybe in his uncle too. That Christmas, exactly 1 year after the night everything fell apart, I was the first to arrive at Jason and Olivia's house. I came early on purpose, not out of awkwardness this time, but because I wanted to help decorate. I brought cinnamon rolls I made myself, still warm in the tray, sprinkled with powdered sugar just the way Max liked them. I wore a ridiculous sweater green with blinking lights and a giant Santa, surfing on a candy cane. I figured if I was going to lean into the spirit again, I'd do it all the way. Jason greeted me at the door, his expression soft but unreadable for a moment, before he pulled me into a hug that said more than any words ever could. "We put you in charge of stockings," he said as he handed me a tangled mess of red and white fluff. I grinned and got to work. Max came barreling down the stairs, minutes later in dinosaur pajamas, and launched into my arms yelling, "Uncle Jams!" as if no time had passed at all. He immediately dragged me to see the cookies he baked with some help, and pointed out the one he set aside for Santa. "He still gets one," he said, "even if we both know it's really just for the fun of it." I nodded, heart swollen. "That's the best reason, buddy." Throughout the morning, family poured in, wrapping paper rustled pots, clanged in the kitchen, and laughter filled the corners of every room. I watched Jason and Olivia exchange knowing smiles. I watched Max dart from person to person like a spark of light, and I felt something settle inside me. Not regret, not shame, but peace. After gifts were opened and everyone settled around the fire, Jason raised his glass and said, "Let's make a toast to the people we love, the ones who've always been there, and the ones who keep surprising us by showing up again." Everyone lifted their drinks and glanced toward me. I felt my throat tighten a little, as I raised mine too. Later, as snow began to fall outside, I found myself sitting on the couch, with Max curled up next to me, half asleep from sugar and excitement. "You know," he mumbled, "I think Santa would have liked you. You ask a lot of questions, and you're kind of weird." "Thanks, Max. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me today." He smiled with his eyes closed. "Don't ruin next Christmas, okay?" "Deal," I whispered, ruffling his hair. As I sat there in the soft hum of holiday warmth, watching my family together again, I realized the truth wasn't the thing that broke us. It was how I told it, when I told it, and forgetting that sometimes magic matters more than facts. I didn't need to be the guy who always pointed out the curtain behind the wizard. Sometimes it's better to sit in the audience and let the show go on, especially when the people you love are still out there waiting for the next act.